Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First order of business is to elect a chairman for the purposes of this meeting. Could I have a nomination for chair, please? Councillor Keane.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Michael Goodridge.
And I will second that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm sorry we've had a late start, but there were various issues that we wanted to clarify before we started. I'll take the agenda in order next. The next item is item 2, disclosure of interests. Are there any?
No.
Thanks very much. We now come under to the Licensing Act 2003, application for a new premises license, Slades Farm, Thorncombe Street, Bramley, Surrey, where we've got the papers. I think it would be helpful, firstly, to introduce who we all are, and then we'll come to the matter. I'm Councillor Michael Goodridge. I am the councillor for Bramley and Wannish, and in case people think I live near the site, I don't. I live in Wannish, just for clarity's sake. And on my right is...
I am Councillor Jackie Keane. I'm a councillor for Shottermill and Critchmere in Hazelmere.
And I'm Jerome Davidson, the councillor for Hindhead in Hazelmere.
And if the officers could introduce themselves.
My name is Kimberly Sohn. I'm Democratic Services Officer and Clerk for this meeting.
Good evening, Carson Jones, Legal Services.
Paul Hughes, Licensing Manager.
Well, thank you very much. We've obviously read all the papers as printed, and we were given today a noise management plan from Calvid Hanks, which is down as an initial draft for review, but I assume it's the final document. The panel haven't had a chance to read it or digest it. And as clearly noise is something which is a licensing issue that is important for us, we want the opportunity of digesting it. We also think it would be helpful for the objectors to have a copy of it so they can digest it, because it's a technical document of 24 pages long, which needs to be looked at carefully. And therefore we are thinking of adjourning. The panel also feel it's important that we have a site visit so that we can put the site, particularly for the Stadfest part of the application, because the application is clearly got 2 elements to it. There is the annual festival, as I understand it, and then there is the events that will occur throughout the year, which I understand, but we won't get into the detail because wanting to adjourn, but understand may now be limited to 12 or something like that a year rather than potentially 365 days a year. So we need to, but the noise bit clearly relates to that. We want to see the context of the housing, the natural geography, and so on, so that we can take all that on board. So since the White panel is late, we were debating what we should do best to ensure that we deal with the thing thoroughly and correctly. We have at the moment, subject to the convenience of other parties, looked at our diaries and are looking at 10 o'clock, Tuesday, the 6th of June as a potential date. But clearly keen to ensure from the applicant's point of view that we get on with it, particularly as the Stadfest thing is going to be end of July. So we're trying to sort of, you know, not just push it in the long grass, but get on with it. And therefore, that will give us an opportunity, the panel, the opportunity of digesting this document and for everybody else to digest it, and for us as a panel to have a site visit at a convenient time to the Hunters. So far as the objectors are concerned, we will assume that all objections still stand when you've read this, unless you write to Paul Hughes and say, well, that's the answer to it all. That's fine. We're happy. Withdraw my objection. Do that by all means, but if don't repeat all your objections to Mr. Hughes again. We'll assume that they are all still there unless you tell us otherwise. Is that clear? And I'm sorry, but you know, you're already keyed up to deal with it today. But we as a panel feel that we really must get more information so that we can deal with the thing correctly and thoroughly to give both parties an opportunity to ensure that justice is done and justice is seen to be done. Is there anything else that, yes?
I understand the reasons for, sorry, my name is Will Pedder. I'm the closest neighbour, not in control of the applicant's family, Nashville Star. A number of us have cleared our diaries for today's meeting and made today. Could I just ask, could I ask the panel that they just take note of the number of objectors who are here today? On the new date, there may well be less of us who can clear our diaries. I, for one, won't be able to do that.
Absolutely, and I think bearing in mind there are 31 objections, including 2 parish councils, that I would be suggesting that we have somebody who will lead on behalf of the objectors, and then what we don't want is 31 people giving evidence all saying the same thing. What would be good is to have one person who, and I don't care who it is, apart from the parish councils who may wish to, I think, speak separately, but so far as the individuals, one person to say, this is the objection, then ask, are there any other points that any of the objectors wish to cover that haven't been covered by that one person, so that we don't have 31 repeats of the same thing, because we have read all 31 objections. So, you know, we take them as read, but then maybe point you, yes, yes, sir.
I appreciate your point, but I think also it's worth noting there are 2 quite separate focus areas here. One is the festival in one area, the other one is the area around Slade's Farm and the glamping site. And there are different interests, so that overall there are concerns about the whole application. There are a couple of focus groups here that I think, so not just one speaker, at least maybe a couple would be relevant.
Spot on. I agree with that entirely.
Thank you.
I think they are, as I said at the beginning, I think, you know, we have two issues here. There's the festival and there's the 365 days potentially of other things, and they are on different parts of the site and obviously affect different buildings.
But it's worth noting also the glamping and the Slade's Farm issue. They say, yeah, reduced number of events down to 12, but the glamping happens through the whole summer, every night of the week. So if you've got alcohol license there, it won't be 12 events. It will be alcohol for the glamping events each night.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, so yeah, and to make it clear, we don't deal with planning, because planning is a totally separate issue, but there are issues, I think, on planning which we won't debate or discuss, but clearly the applicant's got to level things out with the planning department at some stage to ensure that everything is correct that way. Yes, sir.
Roger Wood, I live at High Leybourne in Hascombe. 2 points. Firstly, when you're doing your site visit, it might be advantageous for you to stand at some of the adjoining properties. So on page 14 of this noise management plan, you don't have to look at it now, but number 3 is exactly on my house. And you'd be most welcome to come and have to stand, because it overlooks Slade's Farm. I've been there for 40 years, so you'll get a perspective, I think, not just on site visit, but from other places. The second point is we all, as residents, live very happily together. And when we have issues in the village and elsewhere, we sit down and discuss it. And I would ask the Hutley family if they could join with us. And I think they're willing to, nodding. I've had a private discussion before this, to sit down with us and discuss it. And until there is that discussion, I'm afraid the weight of opinion on our side as objectors is going to get heavier rather than lighter, despite anything like this. So could I ask you please, through the chair, to ask them if they would agree to a discussion?
Yeah, happily. I mean, that talk is better than anything else.
Yeah, and just in response to that, I completely agree. An open dialogue is the best way of solving these things rather than sort of indirectly. But I did request that about a month ago on the Facebook group when this discussion was happening. I requested a meeting from everyone to go through it all, to no response.
Well, that may be historic, but we're now looking forward. We've got 2 weeks in order for various things to happen, for us to read the noise management plan, for us to do a site visit. And I'm very happy, I'm sure my panel members are only too happy, we'll tour wherever you want us to tour. We obviously want to see the site and so on. And if you could let Mr. Hughes know of anybody else who wants us to go to specific places within reason, we will travel around and see it from both perspectives, because I think in planning terms it's always good to look at the development from the neighbour's garden as well as the applicant's garden, and therefore same must apply, I think, to licensing. So we'll certainly so the office will arrange when we're going to do a site visit and to check that it's convenient for both the Hutleys for us to visit and also for neighbours to visit at the same time. So that would be fine. And then the other thing, if you could arrange to meet and discuss it, neighbours with the Hutleys, to see if any common ground can be found, that's good too. But at the end of the day, we as a panel have got to decide it. But clearly, if some of the issues can be resolved, the better. And I know some of the technical things, I mean, Mr. Hughes would tell you if he was going to introduce the case, but he's not, is that we have looked at the signage and where it was put and got photographs and one thing and another about that notice. But the fact we got 31 objectors, it was in the paper, we've seen that. Clearly the village know about it, or the villages know about it. So I don't think there's anything technical that we're going to get too excited about on that. But I know it was mentioned in some of the objectors that the signage wasn't up. But I think, speaking for myself, I'm not going to get too excited about that bit. If there was no objectors here at all, I might have been more excited about it. But 31 of you got there, 2 parish councils have got there. So I think it's got around what is happening. Yes.
Just to say that, I hope that you realise that these subcommittees do take these licensing applications very seriously. And we try to be fair to all sides. And I think this is why we were so late. But if you're willing to talk to each other, may I suggest that before you leave this building today, you maybe talk to somebody from the villages, get a contact number. Maybe Facebook's not such a good way to do it. Face to face is always much better, or a telephone call. But talk to each other before you leave today, so that you've got contacts with each other before you come back to this meeting.
Another idea, I don't know if any of the committee rooms are empty.
I'm sure there are, but I mean, this is booked until
Well,
12 o'clock, so.
I mean, when we adjourn, we will disappear. If everybody present wants to use this chamber and have a chat without any officers here or us here or anything, you presumably put a line in your diary most of the morning. And if you want, Mr. Hughes can remain here if that's a help. So that we exclude the public and the press, and you can have a chat because you're all here and you put a line in your diary, that would be even better.
We're very happy to do that.
And
if
then,
guys want to.
Mr. Hughes can report back on anything that's been agreed or is still an issue. And then we go from there. I mean, when we do these licensing hearings, and nothing to do with this one, but somebody applies, for sell alcohol till 1 o'clock in the morning, and you say, really, do you want it till 1? Wouldn't 12 be all right? And compromise is reached. There may be a compromise over 5 in the morning. I don't know. There are lots of things that you could talk about and see where you get. But it's worth a try, I would have thought. And if you're all here, saves bringing you all together again. And you can use the chamber for another hour and a half. Okay, right. Well, we will now then formally adjourn for the reasons stated. The tentative date to be confirmed is Tuesday, the 6th of June. And we'll see you all then. Yeah. 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. So we've got the bulk of the day to deal with it as necessary. And we will liaise with everybody on the date convenient for us to do the site visit within the next week to 10 days. Okay.